Hey everybody, welcome to the show. We will be discussing, as you may have deduced from the title of the stream, we will be discussing Chapter 4 of The Other West more here in a few minutes. But first, Dana.
But you never know. Sometimes people don't always pay attention to the title of the stream.
Yeah, apparently, especially in our watch along show on Wednesday, when
Why
people
are they
sometimes
just staring at? Why are they just staring at the screen? What's happening? It's
it's like
in the title.
it's in the title, it's in the description. Can you do
You mean this is YouTube? I'm not supposed to have to read?
do do you need me to spoon feed it to you? Can you do anything for yourself?
Ooh,
Um,
depends. Is it bread pudding? Like that stuff.
But and you want me to feed it to you? You don't want to eat it under your own. I mean, you have the use of your arms. Like you could eat it yourself.
Well, yes, but like if I had a spoon and you had a spoon, I could eat it twice as fast.
Is okay.
I mean, bread pudding is pretty darn good. That's all I'm saying.
It is. By the way, Charles in the chat. It's chapter 7. Did somebody say? Did I say chapter 4? Did somebody say chapter 4? It's chapter. We're doing chapter 7. Sorry if I misspoke. If it's my fault, then I apologize. But yeah, chapter 7. Um. So how are you,
I
Dana?
think I just cut you off. I didn't remember that you actually got to what chapter we're doing today.
Ah.
But anywho,
How are things?
mostly good. I mean, not a whole lot's changed since Wednesday,
Well, we just did this on Wednesday, but always it's always
but
nice to check in.
I'm like Wednesday. It was a week from when we go back, so it's now less than a week.
Yes.
Oh God, my heart rate rising at that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, going back. I mean, back to school is nerve wracking for teachers as well as for students. I always used to get that feeling, when I was still going to school, and it's like, oh, summer's almost over. You get that like, oh God, I have to go back to school. It's the worst, and you're like, how is summer over already? I demand a recount. But it's that way for teachers, I'm sure
it's
too.
not. It's been different the past. Well, I mean, last year and this year. And it does vary year to year because this year it's more, oh God, what's especially with the recent spike in COVID cases,
Yeah, yeah.
the upswing there. It's just like, okay, I haven't heard anything. Other districts are saying, masks are going to be required and virtual school will be an option. We've
Right.
heard nothing
You
about
don't know
that.
what your district's going to do about it. Yeah, I was wondering about that because the CDC guidelines now say like everybody should be masked inside in school. You're like everybody should be masked, and I mean, but those are just CDC guidelines. It's not, you know, I guess individual districts can set their own policies.
Yeah, Charles. I mean, no. I like an early start date. I was actually saying this. There was one of my colleagues. I don't remember if it's somebody who taught with me previously and is at a different school now, or if he's actually still at our school. I lose track. I'm getting old, y'all. And he posted something similar about, oh man, these early start dates. There have been times when teachers have gone back at the end of July.
Right.
So students aren't coming back until a week after us. So they'll be there the following Wednesday, which is the 11th. I can wait. Yeah, I think I can math, you guys. Anyway, we're going back next Wednesday. Students are coming back Wednesday after that. So
Right.
that's what I know. I'm going by days of the week at this point, trying to get back into the swing of things. None of this numbers stuff.
Just days of the week. That's
Numbers
all I
are
want to
for
hear.
math, okay? I don't teach math.
You teach the
But
word class.
I like going to school earlier and finishing the school year earlier because let me tell you, that final push after spring break when you don't get any days off except for weekends.
Mhm.
That's like interminable. But the idea that like we would have Memorial Day off and then still go a few weeks into June? No. Additionally, because a part of the reason we start so early is because we have fall break. And then we get a week off at Thanksgiving, 2 weeks between semesters. And then in addition to Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we get a 3-day weekend For President's Day, we typically get a 4 or 5 day weekend. Like in addition to
Yeah.
President's Day, we'll have that day off. And then we'll usually have a professional day either the Friday before or the Tuesday after. And in addition to that, we'll have a day off. So, we get a nice
Right.
long midwinter break. And then
So, and
from usually there's like nothing in March, which is, and then the week that splits March and April, we get off as spring break. So I feel like I get more intermittent time off down in this school year. And that I also like. I would prefer to have a shorter summer break for two reasons. First of all, I like those breaks during the school year. I really, really like them.
Yeah, they space it
When we
out.
have a
Yeah.
month where there's no break, man, it's brutal. That is brutal.
Have to work the whole month. I have to come to work every weekday of the entire month with these kids. Are you
Like,
kidding me?
I mean, I legitimately, I look for, for a couple of reasons. I look for those months to do, that's where I put my doctor's appointments, in part because we don't have as many days off. So it's not like I'm extending a break or anything, or I don't have to worry about, students, extending their breaks and then, I'm out a day and it just becomes, a hassle to deal with. And so those give me a little bit of a breather, when I go in for my checkups and stuff.
Yeah.
So usually I'll do like dentist in the spring and my primary, my well patient visit at my primary care physician in the fall. It's just like have an extra, although since we have, fall break, Thanksgiving, in addition to Labor Day, I don't mind.
You might not need the extra day
all
off.
of August without a break.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me because it's like the first month back and you just had like 2 months off. Okay. Yeah. It's hard. And then you have a week off for spring break and then you go through the rest of April and all of May and there's nothing.
Yeah. It's like
it's
just a death
of
march.
course, the other reason is that like with that long break off, students come back and they've forgotten so much. There's so much, and I'll say potential for that. There's so much of an exacerbation of the learning gap. Students who are from wealthy families have the opportunity to travel and go to Europe and like do service projects and students from less wealthy families have to work.
Yeah, and that's their summer.
They get summer jobs, or they look after their younger siblings so their parents and guardians can work more hours. And it's just, they don't, it just exacerbates that gap. And I don't like that. And I would love to be able to provide more opportunities for our students, in a over a period of time. And I think if we had a shorter summer break, that would be more of an option. It's just the fact that so many of my students at the high school level, where they're 15, just usually 15 turning 16 as sophomores. And they are anxious to get a job because they feel the pressure of money. Like they feel that crunch already.
Yeah.
As
teenagers. Yeah.
Like, I don't like that. And it's not because they're greedy. It's because they want to have, something nice. They want to be able to, have things that they can be happy about and do things with their friends. And of course, they're not going to try to do things with their friends because who knows what your work schedule is going to be like because you're going to have a crappy job because you're just a teenager and, that's what you get. Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's lots of ongoing frustration. And then I have heard through Facebook that our start time is going to be different.
Really?
I've yet to see anything about it from school or district administration. So,
but it's just people who have heard rumors.
No, other schools have posted about this.
But your district hasn't said anything.
Like literally, they posted that the elementary schools are going to start earlier and the secondary schools are going to start later. And I think this is because they have fewer bus drivers. So they have to change routes and they have to, they have to give the bus drivers that they do have more time to do all this stuff. So, and then likewise, the end times are going to be affected as well. And I'm just like, are we getting it. Is this official? Because like the people who shared it from the school's page, and I'm just like, but this was from an elementary school. And I'm like, does this affect all secondary schools,
Right.
like high school and middle school? How does this affect the combination elementary and middle school that we have? That's like midway in the district, that is in the central part of the district.
Yeah, where
Don't know.
do
And I'm
half of
just
them
like,
leave at a different time?
can I like? I wish I hadn't seen that, but it's just like one more thing.
Yeah,
And
that's how it goes.
I'm just
Well, I mean, of course, for me, it's a little different because as an atheist, I don't believe in the end time.
you don't believe in the heat death of the universe?
You know, you just have to.
I can't let you have it.
You
Steve.
just
That's
have
the
to.
rule.
You can't just let me have it. You can't
Nope.
just let me have it. You have to take it away from me
let's be real.
and break it. You have to break
you
my
say
toys.
something that
You
lands
break my
well,
toys.
and I don't have a quibble with it, I acknowledge that.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And I appreciate that the once or twice that it's ever happened.
Oh, it's happened.
I know it happens. I know.
Upon occasion.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
That means a lot.
So
that means a lot.
Yeah, Charles Chapman, I'm right there with you. You know, see, as far as later start times, man, when we get a snow day and we're starting to like 10 o'clock.
And you're just like, let it be like this.
I know, you know? Yeah. I mean, honestly, 9:30 to 4:30 would be great. That would be awesome. And then, you know, teachers work 9 to 5. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, like everybody else. Not everybody else, but like is, you know, the standard first shift, you know.
But sports, Steve.
Oh, God, of course.
Never mind. Hilariously, that there are already morning practices anyway. So, anyway.
And I mean, like the games don't usually start until 6 or 7 anyway.
Yeah, but well, no. Games often start at like 4:30. The earliest ones I think around here start at 4.
Really?
And it depends on the sport too.
Well, okay. Well, what about like a varsity game? Would that start at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon?
No, usually the JV starts at 4.
Yeah, it's like a JV or a freshman game. Who gives a shit about that?
Yeah, but the traveling team has to get the whole team there for that.
Details.
Practicality. It is details, Steve. The details matter.
Yeah. They gotta hustle over to play the game that nobody other than their parents is going to watch, and most of them aren't even going to have their parents there. I'm sorry, kids, but I mean, for like freshmen and even JV in a lot of cases, it's just glorified practice. Nobody cares until you make the varsity team. Nobody cares. It doesn't count. I don't remember. I don't.
Competition, and it should.
Yeah.
It should all be friendly competition. Practice is not competition. It's different. Practice is like skills and things out of, you know, that are contextualized and repeat, you know, that have context within in the game, but you practice them and you develop the form that you need so that then in whether it is a scrimmage at practice,
yeah,
or like a friendly competition against another team, you can incorporate those skills. It's different, Steve.
You know, I agree with you, and I actually I make, you know, I have a video coming out on Monday that I shot today, which you know because we talked about it. About
wait, don't tell me. Let me guess. Is it about the Olympics?
It's about the Olympics. How did you ever guess? But yeah, and one of the things I say in the video is like, in theory, it doesn't always play out this way, but in theory, the Olympics are supposed to be about, yes, competition, but honorable competition, and you know, winning isn't everything, and admiring and celebrating the spirit of sport and the spirit of sportsmanship and all of that, you know,
all that good stuff.
So I mean, I'm 100% on board with all of that. I think maybe I'm carrying some lingering bitterness from having to watch Rudy. And for anybody who doesn't follow the late seating podcast,
Steve,
yes,
y'all have nobody to blame for that but yourselves.
Well, I personally, I don't mean to throw my best friend under the bus here. I don't blame myself at all. I blame Jason 100%.
Steve.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes, Dana.
Whose decision is it for you to be part of that podcast.
My decision.
Mm. So I guess I'll just throw you under the bus.
Ah, damn.
That's okay. You can enjoy it down there with Jason.
Yeah, plenty of room under this bus. It sits really high, you know. But well, no, actually, because when you were talking about the difference between practice and playing like an actual game, of course there's a scene in Rudy where Rudy is on like the practice team basically, but he is like playing. He's on the prep team, so he's playing like the actual starters in the game to let them practice, but he's like hitting everybody as hard as he can, like it's a real game. And at one point, one of the actual players gets pissed at him and is like, "Stop hitting me so hard in practice." And the coach, of course, because it's Rudy's movie, the coach takes Rudy's side and says like, "Yeah, see, if you had as much heart and desire as Rudy had, then you'd be an All-American, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like totally on the other guy's side. I'm like, what good would it do the team if one of the starting players, got hurt in practice because this little shithead has some football fantasy that he wants, you know what I mean? Like what I'm completely on that
there are
guy's
pros and
side.
cons. There are pros and cons. And that's why you do different things in practice and why you tell your players what the objective of any particular exercise is. Is it about just going through the movements to learn where the different players in the field are going to be? Is it about learning to take a hit? Because they need to learn how to take a hit, but they are things that you learn in separation. It's synthesis. So you learn these separate skills and then you start putting them together in some of the scrimmages.
Right.
So it just depends on what they were trying to accomplish. So, and I mean, the movie has its story to tell, so whatever.
Yeah.
Dolph had asks how we know each other, and that's Batman. So
thanks to Batman is how we met.
Batman. Yeah. That's Wednesday's video.
Yeah, that's right.
Although I did not. I have no plans to kill off Alfred. Damien, heck yeah.
You killed him before he even made it out. So.
Yep. Damien's gone.
Yes.
Hi, Sarah. And so Charles Chapman. I think the issue there. I think I know what the issue was. There were not enough potatoes.
You know who doesn't like potatoes?
Yes, I do. Frodo doesn't like potatoes.
Frodo doesn't like potatoes.
That is the true tragedy of
Charles, I said this to Dana in private after I watched the movie. I said this on the podcast when we recorded it to Jason. I was genuinely disappointed that Rudy made it to the end of that movie alive. I know it's based on a true story. I know the real Rudy is still alive and all that, but it's like, that's the, how Quentin Tarantino changed.
They call it based on a true story.
Exactly.
So couldn't they have changed that one little detail?
Take some creative liberties, right? I mean, I know like Quentin Tarantino changed the ending of World War II, for God's sake. The guy who made Rudy couldn't change the ending of Rudy to kill the guy, to give it a happy ending.
That was an artistic choice, Steve.
I know.
Not to.
My favorite little bit, and again, we go into more detail about this on the podcast. But since I'm thinking about Rudy, and then we'll talk about the book, I promise.
We're at 6:22.
Yeah, I know. We're doing the Likert scale, and then we're getting into the book. But I always look up like little bits of trivia about the movie that we're reviewing on Late Seating, and my favorite bit of trivia about Rudy is that when they re-edited the movie to be shown on TV, and they cut some stuff out to make room for more commercials, so that when they showed it on TV,
they could make more money.
They could make more money. And so the director of Rudy was so upset with the commercial TV version of the movie that he demanded they take his name off of it. So it's one of the rare instances where the theatrical cut of the movie has the director's name, but the movie or the TV version, and only the TV version, is credited to Alan Smithee. And my first thought when I read that was, it's Rudy. Like you put your name on the original, but some like how much worse could the TV version be? If you're happy with Rudy as it played in theaters, how could it be so much worse that you don't want your name on it on TV? It's like, okay, dude. I mean, I know
it wasn't what he created.
Like, I thought the guy
and excuse me here for making the assumption that that was a dude.
Yeah, well, you somehow you guessed it. I don't know
Imagine
how.
that, Steve.
How did
Imagine
you
that.
ever
All right,
guess?
so let's go to
Yes.
the thingamabob.
Let's
Come
talk
on.
about, so get your everybody watching. If you did your homework, we'll get out your answers to the
And
Likert
the
scale.
dog didn't eat it, Sarah Scott.
Yeah, Sarah.
It's
We're gonna
okay. If you didn't do your homework or you lost it, you can just do it again.
we're gonna talk about the responses
No
to
points off.
we're gonna talk about the responses to numbers 10 and 11. So let's take a look at number 10 first of all. Number 10 in the Likert survey, and of course we are choosing the option that best describes how we feel about each statement. Number 10 says Black Americans tend to receive longer jail sentences than white Americans for the same crime. A, strongly agree. B, somewhat agree. C, strongly disagree. Or somewhat disagree. D, strongly disagree. And
Okay.
so for this one, I, of course, said A, strongly agree that Black Americans tend to receive longer jail sentences. Because it's kind of like there's one of the ones we did last time, I think, was similar, where it's like if you actually know the statistics, that's just a fact.
Mhm.
That's just a thing that happens. There's really,
This one's pretty um gently stated, but we do talk about this would be one that I would be worried about this year.
yeah.
Um
I mean, like worried about them not knowing it, or
oh gosh. So many of them don't, Steve. No, I'm
well, I
not
mean,
worried
I
about
guess if
that.
you're, I mean, high schoolers.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
high schoolers. Um no, worried about the whole anti-CRT from
Oh, I see.
members.
I see. You're worried about putting this in the class because
Yes.
parents
Yeah,
might
I mean,
freak
and
out.
Charles, you're absolutely right. And in addition to that, it's also higher arrest rates, higher more severe charges, higher rates of conviction, and not stronger, harsher sentences or
Yeah.
longer sentences.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's it's one of them to me. It's one of the strongest pieces of,
it's
or it's several pieces of related
mhm.
evidence for the existence of systemic racism, especially in
Yeah,
the justice system, but just in general. Because no matter, like you said, at every stage when you compare black and
yeah,
white, at every stage, black people are treated worse. They are arrested more often. They are given harsher charges more often. When you do look at whites and blacks with equivalent charges, blacks are given harsher punishments. Like at every level,
mhm.
at every step of the process, they statistically, not in every case, obviously, but
Right.
statistically speaking,
And
they
so
are treated more
that's where
harshly.
I go with this.
Yeah,
That it's not a case by case issue, that it is statistically. And that means that we're dealing with different areas of the country and sometimes different courtrooms and different judges. We're dealing with different officers. So there are differences. It's not like
yeah,
it's not an individual. It's not in this context. It is not an individual problem. And so if you look at if you talk to a judge or a prosecutor, a judge who gave a harsher sentence and a prosecutor who recommended a harsher sentence, um, you know, and you say, does this person hate black people? Did they do this because they didn't like this person because they're black? The answer is probably going to be, well, no.
yeah, not
You know,
consciously.
it's not, yeah, it's not a conscious thing. And that's I think that's why I don't get the antipathy towards CRT, because that's the whole point of CRT, is that it's not just, oh, this one person is a bad person, you know
Yeah,
like it's the opposite of, oh, you're saying so and so is racist. It's like, well, yeah, what you gonna do about it? So you're racist. Not so much so what, but that you can be accidentally racist. You know that it doesn't mean you're deliberately hurtful or mean or cruel. that there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
And and so you would, people are caught up in this idea of like, you know, deliberately refusing to service because of someone's race, or deliberately physical assault because of race.
Right.
And I'm just like, like that's literally the opposite of what this is saying. This is saying that, that that's not the accusation. We're not saying you beat up Black people.
Right. Right.
So
Well,
why would you have a problem with people saying, yes, but I'm not saying you're beating up Black people? That's not what I'm saying. What do you want people to say? Yes, I think you beat up Black people. No, like, I don't get it. It should be less offensive this way. And yet somehow it's not.
Exactly. Well, but I mean, if it was less offensive, then they couldn't use it. They could. You can't start a moral panic over things that people are told they don't have any reason to panic over. I mean, I like, just like based on you looking at it just through a rational lens. You're completely right. It makes no sense.
Wait. What was that?
A rational lens. Oh.
What was it?
You're completely right, Dana.
I'm completely.
You're completely right.
Oh! Wait. Hang on. Where did that go? Ah, here you are.
Can't wait to see this.
You love me. You really love me.
That's quite a Sally Field you got there. That's I like that. I love that you went and found a prop. You were like, I got something for this. Just hang on.
I know. Actually, I have a little wooden statuette, but I was like, oh, this one's shiny.
Yeah, it's better.
It's not the right shape. The other was actually a little humanoid figurine. He's holding a shovel.
It works.
But this one, it has the whole, well, I guess Oscar doesn't have wings, but it's got a golden figurine on it, even though it's like, I don't know. That's not really a trophy. Does it count as a trophy? It's not a cup. I guess it's still a trophy.
I would call it a trophy. I feel like
Okay.
it's a little too pedantic to be like, well, actually, it has to be a cup in order to be a trophy.
I just don't know. I mean, because does it have to be a cup in order to be a trophy? I don't know.
According to common usage, I would say it doesn't.
Okay.
I don't know of anybody who makes that fine of a distinction, at least not. But then again, that may be self-fulfilling prophecy, because anybody who made that fine of a distinction, I probably wouldn't want to spend too much time around them. I'd be like, oh, Jesus Christ. You know what I mean?
Oh, thank you, Sarah. I'm a thespian, Steve. Although Steve should know that too, because he also watched The Little Princess. You should know that, Steve. I'm a thespian.
Yes, you are. You are quite a thespian.
Oh, well, go on with the next thing.
Not go on like complimenting you. Let's go on. So the next.
I mean, we would be here all night, you guys.
That's true. There's a lot. There's a lot.
there's a lot that is absolutely amazing about me.
so much. The next item on the survey is number 11, which says women usually talk more than men.
I love this one. What'd you put?
I put C, somewhat disagree.
Okay. So I'll be interested to see what shows up in chat.
Yeah. What did everybody else say? But I said C. It's another one of those where I felt like it seems like the question is sort of getting at it depending on how you interpret it, like it could be referring to, some kind of fundamental difference between men and women that I don't think is really there. Like, I feel like it's possible. It may be possible if you could even conduct such a survey, it may be possible that in practice, women on average tend to talk more than men. But if that's true, that's probably a result of socialization, not, well, women talk more. You know what I mean? Like, women may, you know what I mean? So I didn't want to go like all the way to the extreme.
This one, unlike some of the others, does not say like innately or biologically.
Yeah. And that's why I mean, like with a lot of these, it's open to interpretation. I didn't want to nail myself down to, oh, that's definitely true or that's definitely not true. You know what I mean?
It's interesting that you mentioned surveys. What did you
Please.
mean by that?
Well, like if there was some way that you could, if there was some way that you could measure this, you know, I mean, maybe not survey, maybe not a survey like asking people, but I mean, like if you could take some, if you could conduct some kind of a study, let's say, maybe not survey, but some kind of a study where you try to determine the in a particular setting, like at a school or in a workplace or whatever, where people have to talk to each other a lot, like what total number of minutes that people talk, how much of that is done by women and how much of that is done by men, that sort of thing.
Okay, so it's interesting that you, because there have been studies of this sort, but that brings up one of the points. How do you count how much people talk? And so you said minutes, but you could also do it by like number of words or the
True.
number of times that they speak. So essentially, like the number of lines that you have. So there are different ways of, and there have been studies done like this, and then you and I think both Charles have mentioned the context, and that really matters a lot, because what studies have found is that in um, hierarchical situations, such as school or meetings in a job, not so much group meetings where you're trying to accomplish something, you're trying to work together to get something done, but in like presentations. Yeah, Sarah, exactly, that men will talk significantly more than women, and that this is also in media. When women talk a third as much as men, they are perceived to have equivalent speaking time.
Yeah.
And so and that it factors into also visualization, like the number of extras in the background is also going to be significantly more women than men. And I think the ratio is about the same. If it's 3 men for every woman, then it's perceived as parity. So pretty interesting
Interesting.
there. But in smaller social groups, women talk significantly more than men. And so that connects in with what Sarah is
That's kind
saying
of what Sarah's saying. Yeah.
about, yeah, exactly, that that girls are encouraged to talk and be emotional and boys are supposed to be tough and reserved. And I would guess that that's the reason, but it's possible that there's more to it than that. So just like we were talking about on Wednesday, that despite the fact that these are very muscular and possibly there's the film has been Magic Mike has been very heteronormativized. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that it represents traditional heteronormative values in some ways by making sure that we know that the characters are heterosexual. Very important. But at the same
Absolutely.
time, the things that we like about Mike are not stereotypically masculine things, that he is
Right.
kind and he is gentle and he is caring. And he is very trusting, even though that is something that gets him in trouble. The more skeptical, less trusting character, the girl that he's interested in, is, not the trusting one. But, of course, she also, fulfills a more nurturing role toward both her brother and toward Mike. But yeah, he's definitely good at, he's good at sharing of himself, even as, he sort of keeps himself apart from the other members of, his company,
Mm-hmm.
his troop, that he sees himself as set apart from them. So yeah, it's just really interesting about that. So I guess that gives us a nice way to segue into talking about the book and
Yeah.
how it deals with race and gender.
Absolutely. And so we're talking about chapter 7, but this is also the
But we're
beginning.
starting with part 3.
Yeah, this is the beginning of part 3, which is another little interlude with a visit between the two Wesses, where Wes, the author, visits the other Wes in prison. And the subject of this talk between the two of them is really uh, how much are they responsible for where they are in their lives, basically.
Hmm.
It starts out with the other Wes denying that he did the crime that he's in prison for,
Hmm.
which we are told is something that he has maintained. Like he at this point in
Consistently.
yeah, at this point in the story, the Wes, the author, tells us like the other Wes, he has never acknowledged that he actually did the crime. He has insisted that he wasn't there, it wasn't him, you know.
Hmm.
And he sticks to that, and he says it so well, like you say, he's so consistent that the Wes, the author, this time just kind of laughs it off, just like,
Hmm.
okay, whatever, man.
Again.
You
Well,
know,
I mean, they had a song about that. I think it came out after this. Maybe not.
what song?
You never heard that? It wasn't me.
Oh, I've heard of. I don't know if I've heard this song, but I've heard of it. And you know, and it's a really good Eddie Murphy stand up bit too, about,
It
you know,
is.
like well, like a guy's girlfriend catches him cheating on her, like actually catches him in the act. Wasn't me. I saw you. Wasn't me. I looked right in your face. It wasn't me. And
I
eventually,
even got it on camera.
and eventually, she's like, maybe it wasn't you. Also
Well, I
known
mean,
as.
in Chicago,
Oh yeah,
he says to her, "What are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?"
right. Yeah, exactly. Your lying eyes.
Well,
Um,
the gun didn't believe him.
yeah. Oh. So yeah. So the other West is, isn't it funny how everybody in prison is innocent? You know, that's kind of like what the author West is saying, because he mentions, like, like so many other of his fellow inmates, he was insisting that he didn't actually commit the crime that he was incarcerated for, and that leads to West, the author, sort of musing about how, even though he and the other West have been talking for a few years now and have these regular visits, and plus they've written letters and such, um, that he doesn't really feel like he knows him. That in a way, they're, despite their similarities, they're so different that he wonders if he knows this guy and if he could ever really know him, because they're so different, you know. Um, and there's a bit, one of the nicer bits of writing that I thought in this section that we're going to talk about, where he says, and this is Wes, the author, saying, I started to think more about his repeated defense, offered again and again in earnest. I wasn't even there that day. Did he think that through repetition it would become true? That if he just incanted the phrase enough, the prison walls would collapse and he'd be able to walk back home? Did he think it could reverse time? How far back would he have to go to be innocent again? And I just think that's a nice little turn of phrase, and a nice way. It's a little poetic, you know what I mean? But
It's a well, I will say it is poetic, but it's a little heavy-handed
it is,
on
yeah,
the poetry there, on the, not so much on the poetry, but on the rhetorical significance. It's sort of, this.
yeah,
But what occurred to me is that it downplays the significance of repetition psychologically. Like, we know that repetition leads to acceptance.
yeah, yeah. It's not
I mean,
magic. It's a thing that happens. Yeah,
it's psychology. It's
yeah,
it's the way the human brain works. It's neurobiology, honestly. And we have a number. It affects us in a number of ways. It makes us more. Essentially, it makes us more receptive to accepting whatever that is. And the one that really hit me on this was research into music.
uh-huh.
The more that I mean, it's cyclical. The more that you listen to a certain type of music, the more that when you listen to another example of that same type of music later, the higher you will rate it in how much you like it.
Yeah,
And so, as if you increase your listening to this type of music, then when you listen to other examples of it later, you tend to rank those higher in
right.
comparison to other genres. And with individual songs as well. So because there were essentially, there was a song that came out, and it was sort of, it wasn't one that everybody, that was a great song, but it talks about, earworming and songs that are
Yeah.
catchy.
Yeah.
And they're ones that, they get lots of play, and then because, everybody hears them everywhere, it influences, really the industry as a whole. Like, yeah, I kind of like that one. It's not, going to be, maybe very few people's favorite song, but
Right.
everybody kind of likes it. And so there's certain elements, there was a song, gosh, like it's right there, where they literally constructed this song based on that, and it was like this smash hit. You're like, hey, it's kind of nice. And so it kind of went viral. And oh gosh, I'm gonna have to look this up later. Anyway, y'all figure it out, put it in the
But
comments.
yeah, yeah, the idea of,
But
yeah.
that affects, I mean, that affects so much of what we do. Um the An incredibly good predictor of election outcomes is name recognition.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not policy or demographics, but simple name recognition. What is familiar, what has been repeated so that you know it and are familiar with it, that's what you like. And I mean, it's really interesting. I'm very interested in how our preferences form. Like, I mean, I like eggs, delicious, but I don't like onions. And I have another member of my household for whom it's the exact opposite.
Right.
Onions are great, eggs are gross. And I'm just like, but you're so wrong. And Charles, this would have been from like a decade ago, maybe a little bit more. I'm thinking around 2012. But I read some articles on it. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that song. I never hear it. And it's along those lines. So that was something, that line when did he think that through repetition it would become true? And it's not in this. I don't think the author is looking at this in the right way. That it's not about him getting to walk home. It's about him living with himself. I mean,
Yeah, like he
that's
wants to
if
convince
he's
himself that he's
he's
innocent.
essentially asserting, I'm not a bad person. I'm
Yeah.
not a bad person. I have worth. I have value, because in our retributive, judicial system, it says it makes you an unperson.
Yeah.
That you're
You
taken away.
become
We
what you
don't
did.
want you.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
putting you away.
Yeah.
And it equates that not guilty verdict with worth.
Yeah.
You are still a person. We still want you here. And so I think that's what he's pushing back against. I wasn't even there. That wasn't me.
Yeah.
I still matter. That's what he wants. He wants to matter.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we come down on what is really sort of the fulcrum on which this whole story shifts, which is how much are we responsible for where we end up in our lives?
Mm-hmm.
Because the Wes asks the other Wes that question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he says, "Do you think that we're all just products of our environments?" And the other Wes says, "We're products of our expectations." And what he means by that is not our expectations of ourselves,
Right.
but other people's expectations of us,
Mm-hmm.
which he argues
Shape us.
can shape us and shape our expectations of ourselves. And I mean, and the other West puts it, he simplifies it to the point where I think the argument loses its power, because he basically says we do what other people think we're going to do. You know, if they expect us to graduate from high school, then we'll graduate. If they expect us to get a job, then we'll get a job. If they expect us to go to jail, then that's what we'll do. You know, and he the way he states it, it's very cut and dry. Like we have no agency at all. We are the products of expectations that other people put on us. And Wes, the author, uh, says, I recoiled from his ability to shed responsibility seamlessly and drape it at the feet of others.
So this is something I've thought about a lot.
Yes, yes,
A
yes.
lot. In education right now, there is one of the buzz phrases is growth mindset, and how that differs from fixed mindset. And so this is essentially a variant of locus of control, which is what they're talking about. So a fixed mindset is I am how I am. I just
Right.
am how I am. There's nothing, if I'm a smart person, I'm a smart person. If I'm a dumb person, I'm a dumb person. There ain't nothing I can do about it. This is just how I am.
Right.
And a growth mindset is this is how I am, but I can change that. My actions affect, I am responsible for making myself into the person that I choose to be.
Right.
And so there's a correlation between growth mindset and risk taking, as well as, consequently, success. And there is more of a correlation between people who demonstrate or express a fixed mindset and more stagnance, a lack of risk taking actions, and a lack of realizing opportunities. And people with a fixed mindset are much more likely to describe things in the manner that the other West does. And people with a growth mindset are much more likely to describe things in the way that the author does. And that's the difference between internal locus of control. I am, in control of things,
right,
versus external locus of control. The situation controls me. But what I have not seen is what the problem that I have with this is the organization of causality. Because how it's typically presented is that having a growth mindset leads to a willingness to take risks, and that we can foster a growth mindset and our students will be more willing to take risks. They will push themselves because they know that success is possible if they try hard enough. They can do this. However, and they will take responsibility for, their own successes and failures.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think it is just as reasonable that it's the other way around. People who have experienced success are more likely to want to take credit for it, for what has happened to them.
Yeah,
even if it really wasn't entirely because of them.
Yeah, of course.
So, it's not just responsibility. The author is, especially when we see all the things, kind of like you said with Rudy, about all the things people did for him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he owns it for himself. It's his story, and he's the hero. And here he says, I recoiled from his ability to shed responsibility seamlessly and drape it at the feet of others. But what we don't see the author doing anywhere throughout the book, he acknowledges the things other people did for him, but it's still a book about his choices and how they led to his success.
Yeah.
And I don't think the author adequately emphasizes the fact that the resources that he had and that his family had and that the other West did not have access to, played a significant role in the opportunities that he had and his resultant success. He does not take those opportunities and place them at the feet of others, where sometimes they do belong.
Yeah.
We are responsible for our own choices and our own actions, but we are choosing from options that are available to us, and not everybody's got those same options.
Yeah. It's a combination of both, Mm-hmm. That's the thing is,
and it's so it's as a teacher, it's so, and anybody in education, it's so tempting to focus on that growth mindset.
Right, but it's not that simple.
It's not that simple.
Well, because what there is, I think there's a great deal of truth to what the other West says. I don't think it's as simple or as cut and dry as he implies with the way he says it. But if you are told directly or indirectly, I mean, if you are sent the message often enough that you don't matter, that you
Mhm.
can't do it, that nothing you do is important, that your choices don't matter, that either you don't deserve opportunities or you don't have opportunities. If you get that message enough, it'll sink in,
Yeah.
and that will affect your behavior, and it will affect what direction your life takes. But at the
William
same time,
Goldman talks about it
yeah.
in, except he talks about it from the other direction. And I've never been able to find it. I know I've read it in one of the books of his that I have, but whenever I go back and I try to find it, can't find it. I don't know if it's in The Princess Bride or in Adventures in the Screen Trade or in Which Lie Did I Tell. It's in one of those three because it's the book that I own. Those are the only three books of his that I got. So it's one of those. And he says that when you are producing a movie, you have to add 10% for the shit. I'm using the curse word, but I promise you,
It's a
promise
quote.
you he uses that. I may have the, I may not have that, may not be a direct quote, but I know he uses that.
Yeah.
And so what he's saying is that, when you sign on a star, you have to sign on that star's retinue. Like they're going to come like with their own hairdresser,
Yeah.
and you may have a hairstylist for the movie, but the star's going to be like, oh, I work with this person.
I have my guy. Yeah.
I have
Exactly.
this person.
Yeah.
And so, the way it's going to go is the studio's going to say, well, we're not paying for that. And so, you go back to the star and you say, well, the studio won't pay for that. And the star throws a fit and walks away. And so then you have to go back to the studio and say, well, I told the star what you told me to tell the star. And, they threw a fit and walked away. And so you end up then, luring the star back by paying for the star's hairstylist at a higher rate than they originally asked for because you have offended them.
Because now you have to solve a problem. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But the reason for this, he says, is because of this echo chamber, that when everybody around you is telling you, oh, yes, that is a brilliant idea. When everybody is always telling you yes, and that you have a brilliant ideas and that you are the shit.
Yeah.
Eventually you start saying, well, I mean, I guess they can't all be wrong, can they?
Right. There's got to be something to this,
likewise,
right?
It's not healthy. It's really not healthy in either direction, too far in either direction. In this case, we're seeing the other side of it when people are telling you that you can't achieve, that you're not worthy, that your ideas don't matter. And not just people telling you things and not just people believing you things. Believing in you. It's not just about attitudes, but it's also about experiences. And that's, Charles, that's kind of what I've been sort of looking into as far as like what research there is. But my position is that it is the experience of meaningful success that leads to a growth mindset. So when a student experiences success,
when they see that it's possible,
actions, they see that success is possible. However, it can't just be like a participation trophy, which, by the way, this isn't. I have one of those too, but it's not as nice.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Also, it's just, I mean, they're, the other ones for sports, which I participated in, wasn't good at. This was for, what was this one for? Prepared speaking.
Oh, hell yeah.
First place, y'all, States.
Naturally.
So first place, level 1 at States. Okay.
That's you pretty much.
Yeah. Well, this is all extempore from my mother wit. As Billy Shakes has written.
Billy Shakes, like we call him.
Yeah. But Charles, again, say that yes, that kind of was my point about, the shit. That it's still a problem either way.
Yeah.
That,
you need to strike a balance. You need to be confident in your abilities, and you need to be able to believe in yourself and believe that you are capable of success and that you can do the things that you need to do. But you also need to have humility
Mhm.
and not think that
Sort of,
everything you do
and
is
I
great,
wouldn't
and
say
be
just
open to
confidence. I would
criticism. And
say, yeah, I would call it self-awareness. Like you
yeah,
need to
absolutely.
know, have a good idea of what your abilities are and what you
Absolutely.
can or can't do. And that's, the other word that I emphasize is yet. I can't do this. You can't do this yet, or you can't do this now, or you can't do this because it's not important to you to practice. That's okay. Let just own it. The reason you're not good at this thing is because you have not devoted enough time and effort to improving your abilities in this thing. That's how it is. And there may be other things in your life that are more important than this, and that's okay.
And that's fine. Yeah.
you know, but own those choices. If something else is more important to you, you are, especially with my students at 15 and 16 years old, they are just that was how old I was when I told my mom. It was sophomore year between fall and spring semesters when I didn't sign up for track in the spring. And I told my mom that I wasn't going to be on the track team and she couldn't make me. I mean, no,
Yeah.
you know, I may have been a little bit sassy, but really not. I was just like, no, I don't like it. I'm not going to do it, and you can't make me. And she was like, well, it's important to be active for your health. I'm like, okay, no, I'm not going to do it. and now I make myself do it because it's good for me.
Right.
And I still don't like it.
But at least it's your decision. Well, another thing about this is, and another thing about this, and then we can move on to the chapter. I mean, I think
Now that we've been gapping for an hour,
well, I think
we've
a
gone
lot
through
of
3 pages.
well, we're talking
I
about book
mean,
stuff now. We're talking about
a
book stuff
page in
now.
like 1, 2, 3, like 5 lines.
Yeah, it depends on what edition you're reading. But
A page
like
front and back and 5 lines.
I like I think a lot of people, especially when we are having sort of these abstract conversations about these things, people forget that depending on what scale you're talking about, both of these things are valuable and both of these things should be practiced. Like I feel like on the scale of individuals, I do think it's generally good practice that we as individuals get used to owning our choices and taking responsibility for what we do. And I think that's just a mark of maturity and of mental
Mm-hmm.
health and of being an adult. And like you take responsibility for the things that you've done, and take ownership of your own life. And if there's something in your life that you have the power to improve and you want
Mm-hmm.
to improve it, then you should do that and feel empowered to do that. But on a societal level, clearly, we can't just leave people to their own devices. We can't just say, well, if the poor people want to not be poor, then they need to work themselves out of poverty. Like you can on the large scale, on the scale of communities and societies, we need to acknowledge that there are factors that seriously limit people's options and and
Well,
and seriously
that's the
skew
difference
results.
between mindset and locus of control. Mindset is, whether you are, fixed and stasis and static, or whether your actions can change who you are. Whereas locus of control is how much agency you have. I have
Yeah.
control over this, or this is outside of my control. And with locus of control, it's more about awareness of the situation, because
Right.
sometimes things are in your control and you have the opportunity to do something about it, and you need to be aware of that. And sometimes they're not.
Yeah. Oh,
There's not a
absolutely.
dadgum thing you can do about it.
Absolutely.
You just need to decide how you're going to respond to that, because that's all you can do. You can't change or directly affect the situation. You can just indirectly affect it. And so I think that's sort of what you're getting at there.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important to locus of control and mindset are related, but they're not the same thing. They are talking about two different things. So it's important to talk about them in relation to each other.
And I mean, like as in terms of a person in authority or a government or something like that, I think in many, if not most cases, like a lot of times, especially right wingers, Republicans, small government types, they use that personal responsibility thing
Mm-hmm.
as an excuse to not help people
And
and
to absolve
to
themselves of
absolve themselves.
responsibility for
Exactly.
others, and
Exactly.
for their own actions which affect others. They
and
essentially they They don't take responsibility for the effects of their actions on other people.
Exactly.
Your actions don't only affect yourself.
The fact that people are responsible for their own actions does not mean that you are not under an obligation to help people, lift themselves, or to lift people out of
Or to just not
of
make it more difficult
of
for
bad.
them.
Yeah,
Maybe.
at least, yeah, like yeah, exactly. Like it doesn't mean that you don't have a role to play. If you are in a position where you can do something. uh but I think that's part of what I was getting at too, with this idea of like, well, it's either one or the other. And if you're a small government Republican type, you're like, well, people, have to, rugged individualism, and people are responsible for their own lives. And that's they're trying to dress up what they really think, and make it sound noble. And what they're really saying is, fuck you. I don't want to help you. I don't think you deserve my help, and I don't want to help you, and I'm fine if you die. Like that's basically the Republican attitude toward people living in poverty. Hey, you know what? If you worked hard enough, you could get out of poverty. If you can't do that, I don't care if you die. But they dress it up as, oh, people need to be responsible for their own decisions and their own lives. Okay. Um, but anyway, chapter 7. The title of this chapter, it's such a bright, happy
Cheerful.
title. Cheerful, yeah. The land that God forgot. Whew. Okay. Things. Something tells me this chapter isn't going to be very inspiring. But this is 1997, and our first section, we are with Wes, the author, and he is fast approaching the moment of truth in his airborne training. He has joined the military, and he is about to jump out of, as they say, a perfectly good airplane, to get certified so he can be a paratrooper. And he's 5 minutes away from them reaching the point where everybody jumps. And yeah.
That of course was a moment for me, because like they're told 5 minutes, and of course they call back 5 minutes to acknowledge that they have heard this and that they heard the correct thing.
Like in theater.
But like in theater, except they don't say it the same way. In theater, you say, thank you, 5.
Right. And in this, they
don't say thank you.
They don't say thank you, 5. No, they say, yeah.
Gee, imagine that.
They're not feeling very thankful.
Not right now.
They're not feeling very thankful.
Ground, they're like, oh,
thank you. Yeah. Thank you, ground. Exactly. But yeah, so he and a bunch of other people are in the plane, and they're all there. We're told that they're from different jobs and different branches of the military. There's people there that are Marines and Army and Navy, but they're all there because they need their certification as paratroopers, and this is how you get it. And while he's waiting, Wes tells us, he catches us up a little bit with what has been going on with him. He's finished high school and he joined the military, because as he was approaching the end of high school, he started to he was, as we touched on in the last chapter, he was playing basketball, and he started to realize, as he started to come to the end of his high school career as an athlete, and he was being recruited by colleges, but he started to notice that while he was definitely a good player, he was not in the same league as the
really good players.
The truly good players. Yeah. He said they were playing easy and I was playing hard. And in this case, what that means is they were playing easy because they didn't have to play hard. It just came naturally to them. And
there's that fixed mindset.
Well,
it did not just come naturally to them. They had some natural abilities. But one of the things that, in baseball, your major league baseball players often have birthdays in the first 3 months of the year. Yeah. And it's because of the way cutoff dates work for sports when you're little, and how that affects progression throughout. The theory is that it's because of the cutoff dates. for sports when you're little, and how that affects play as you get older, and the opportunity to play in more and more challenging leagues and to work with better coaches. And so it's kind of like we see with structural and institutional racism, that it's not deliberate, because these high level leagues for kids are still picking from the best, but there are certain groups, like those who are born in the first part of the year based on the cutoff systems for,
Right.
for rankings, that have an edge. And so, it's height obviously gives you an advantage in basketball.
Definitely.
So does some of your musculature, but that can be eclipsed by training. And what he's saying is playing hard. These are athletes who played harder earlier, and
Right.
who had the opportunity for better training and better coaching, in part because of their natural ability got them noticed, but also in part maybe because of where they were, because of who was around at the time, because of factors that were outside of their control.
That's true. Yeah,
So
well, it's just like you mentioned baseball. I mean, one of the sort of factories of baseball players over the last 50 years or so, especially, has been the Caribbean, and specifically the Dominican Republic.
mhm,
And it's not that people who are born in the Dominican Republic are somehow naturally better baseball players than other people. It's that baseball is the sport there, and kids, from the moment that they are physically able to do it, are encouraged to play. And so, yeah, I
mhm,
mean, when a Dominican teenager, gets to be 14, 15, 16 years old, he's been literally playing baseball, organized baseball,
mhm.
for almost his entire life. So of course he has an advantage that players from other parts of the world don't, because yeah, he's been practicing his entire life.
Mhm.
And the perception is, oh, he's Dominican, it's in his blood. No, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe there may be some genetic predisposition, but it's probably mostly just the fact that they play it all the time, and
Mhm.
it's
Well,
it's
things
you
like
know
Simone Biles, her
yeah,
her I'm trying to think of the different events. I think because when I was looking through I think it's the parallel bars, or not
yeah,
parallel bars, that's men's.
the uneven
The uneven
bars.
bars, the uneven bars.
Yeah,
And in looking through the evolution of women's gymnastics over the years, in the late 50s, early 60s, they moved the bars further apart.
right.
And
Yes.
so, like in the 50s and early 60s, you see women sort of using the lower bars, they sort of bounce off it and then do, some
Yeah,
combinations that way that involve sort of hitting it with your hips and using
and
that
spin.
momentum to,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
reverse.
yeah.
And you can't do that anymore on the bars. And so it's more about twisting between them and going through, out, and over. And so you have to, you being able to reach and hit the bars is easier if you have, and also being able to swing and get momentum. If you've got a longer body and longer legs, you can get more momentum. And
Right.
she like this big, she really short.
Oh yeah, she's
And
like 4'8". She's
yeah, she's
tiny.
teeny
Yeah.
tiny. I mean, as far as height. And so, that probably contributes to that being one of her worst events. Her best events are vault, floor, and balance beam, all of which she has moves that she has been the first to land in competition. So they're named for her. And I mean, all of those are also constrained by space in different ways. Like literally, when you have a shorter body, you can do if just like flat across the mat from corner to corner, your body fits more times. Period.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's just how it is. Your feet are a part of the reason that men that the balance beam was developed for women and not for men. In part was because men's gymnastics developed out of strength training routines that used these particular devices,
Apparatus. Yeah.
these
Yeah.
particular apparatus. Thank you. That's actually the word. And I was like, there's a word for that. Anyway, use these apparatuses for strength training. And so that's why it's artistic gymnastics, not because it's supposed to be, flowery, but because this is gymnastics as its own art rather than to train to do something else. It's not for training. It's an art in its own right. So the balance beam wasn't part of that, but balance beam was developed for women because in part because women are supposed to be graceful and limber, and those are skills and qualities that are shown through balance beam routines. Mm-hmm. But also, they got smaller feet. They tend to be smaller, and they tend to have smaller feet. So, like, when you're a big person and you have bigger feet and your center of gravity is higher, it makes it harder. And so, Biles is I don't want to say that it's easier for her, but her physique is more suited to the balance beam.
She has an advantage, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's and
that's not an unfair advantage, but I mean, she has.
Yeah, just. But at the same time, there are other gymnasts. There are certainly other people in the world who are 4'8", and they're not Simone Biles.
Right.
So there is some element of that. It's just that's just the starting point. What happens and what there's what's innate, and then there's what happens and what you do with what happens, and those other two are interdependent.
Yeah. And by the way, before we go off the topic of gymnastics, I just want to give a shout out to Suni Lee, who won the individual all-around gold medal for Team USA yesterday. You're goddamn right. Simone Biles, she did what she had to do for herself, and she took herself out of the competition, and good for her, and I hope she's okay. And Suni Lee stepped up and won the goddamn thing anyway. So hell yeah, she said before the Olympics, when everybody expected that it would be Simone dominating the competition. Suni said, "My Olympic dream is to win the silver."
Aww.
And she did herself one better. So I was so happy to watch that last night. It was amazing. So anyway, good for Suni Lee. Sixth American gymnast in a row to win the women's individual all-around gold. That's our event. Team USA. That's our event. I'm just saying.
I know.
I'm just saying. Anyway,
my Olympics video is not scripted yet. Not much less shot.
Well, I mentioned Simone Biles a little bit in my video, but I don't mention Suni Lee at all because it's not really about that. It's more about it's about the and people who see it on Monday. It's about the Olympians who don't actually officially represent nation states, and how they are also and what their inclusion in the games tells us about what the Olympics are all about and the meaning of the Olympics and all that stuff. So, but anyway, so just wanted to say, shout out to Suni Lee. Good job. We're all proud of you. I'm sure she's watching in Tokyo. She
probably won't watch it. She's probably, honestly, right now, she might be watching this because she's probably recovering.
Yeah, it's like, really
I hope she's watching this while she's in an ice bath.
Exactly. In an ice bath, eating some ice cream, hopefully, because God damn it, you earned it, kid. But anyway, so Wes is he decides that when he's getting to the end of high school, and he decides that he can't count on basketball to be like his ticket to bigger and better things.
He's got to have a backup plan.
He's got to have a backup plan, and then and in order to explain how he got, and it turns out his backup plan winds up being the military. But to explain how he got there, it's not. You might assume like, well, he went to military school. There you go. But that's not exactly how he gets there. First, he tells us about how his mom nurtured this love of reading in him, and the first book that he tells us that he really read and loved and enjoyed. Was this book called The Fab Five, which was about the Michigan State or the Michigan basketball team that won the national championship with 5 freshmen. And I reckon you, even if you're not like a huge basketball fan, you recognize the names Chris Webber and Juwan Howard specifically, who went on to become huge stars. And so and being a basketball player himself, like he read this book and really got into it and discovered not just that he enjoyed this particular reading about these particular people, but he liked reading. He liked that book. So he started reading other books. And one of the books that he read was the autobiography of Colin Powell. And he finds that he relates to Colin Powell's story. And he talks about how, Colin Powell's story is different than the sort of he talks about how like the rite of passage for black folks in the
Black men.
United States is the autobiography of Malcolm X. Like everybody sort of there's always a point where everybody reads that. And of course, that's a very different story than the autobiography of Colin Powell, because Malcolm X was standing outside of a system and saying, we need to change this. We need to tear this down. This doesn't work. And Colin Powell's story is about rising up within the system and finding success. And that resonates more with Wes than, and he says, yeah, he doesn't deny anything that Malcolm X says. Like he says that there's truth in Malcolm X's story and what Malcolm X is saying. And of course, the problems that Malcolm is talking about are very real and very important and need to
And
be
still
acknowledged and
exist.
still exist and need to be acknowledged and addressed. But for Wes personally, Colin Powell's book lines up more with his experience. And he says, Powell, in his pragmatic way, wanted what I wanted: a fair shot, a place to develop himself, a code that would instill discipline, restrain passion, and order his steps, a way to change the world without first unleashing the whirlwind. So he decides he wants to join the military because that's what Colin Powell did. And that's how, according to Colin Powell's telling of his own story, that's how he was able to lift himself up. And that's what Wes wants to do. So he joins the military. And he doesn't want to just join the military. He doesn't just enlist. He wants to be an officer. He says he wanted to attend junior college and go through the commissioning process, which would allow him to get an associate's degree and become a second lieutenant in the Army. He says, quote, I wanted to lead soldiers. So he doesn't just want to join the military. He wants to be an officer. So there you go. And that brings us to 3 minutes, 3 minutes before the jump.
3 minutes, we replied with a good deal less gusto.
Yeah, because now it's like, oh, it was 5. Oh shit. We're getting there. It's almost time now. So he goes to Valley Forge and becomes a cadet commander. And he says that he would be he got to the point where right before the plane ride that we're sort of in the middle of, he was selected regimental commander for the 70th Corps of Cadets, which meant that he was the highest ranking cadet in the 70th Corps, which was over 700 people. So this is like a big deal for him. And this is sort of him getting the first taste of what he wants out of the military, which is to be a commander of troops, to be in charge of people. And he has just attained this status, but he needs to get his paratrooper qualification. And once he gets this, then he can assume that position that he wants and be a cadet commander. And now we're at 1 minute. And and now we're at 1 minute, and he says now everything starts to race through his mind. Now he's like,
one of the things that I like in this chapter is the pacing. I think it's very well done.
Yes.
That he has like 5 minutes, and then he has sort of a longer flashback, 3 minutes, and then a shorter flashback, and 1 minute. And my mind retraced my 3 weeks of training in 15 seconds. So he has a really short flashback.
Yeah.
So
and it's all just
really helps with the momentum of, and the increase in, anticipation.
Yeah. Yeah, and he goes back through his training. He's like, okay, what am I supposed to do? I step out with one leg. I keep my chin against my chest. I have my right hand on the handle of my parachute. Whoa, shit! What do I do? Do I count to three or do I count to four? What do I? Which way do I pull if the wind is blowing left to right? You know, and he's like, he's trying to remember all of these things that he's supposed to do, and he's like, oh man, I can't remember how much time do I have left. And and then he finds himself at the front of the line and and it's one of those things where you just have, when you get that far you pretty much have to go. He talks about how like there were examples of guys who tried to get out of line or tried to not jump or hesitated when they got to the door and they weren't sure if they wanted to do it, and the sergeant, whoever, the black hats, the guys who were in charge, pick them up and throw them out of the plane. It's like it's too late to change your mind. You're going, you
Yeah.
know, because otherwise it would hold up the line, and you know some people would, you know, it would take, and they're like the airplane is moving and they have a drop zone, and once you get over the drop zone you have to go, because if you wait too long you're not going to land in the drop zone anymore, and
Yeah.
that's bad. You know, so it's like once you're at that point it's like you no longer have a choice. You could have backed out before, now you can't back out, you have to go. And he talks about how the people, when they get to that point when the light turns green and it's time to go, they pray. um, and he says the formalities that usually accompanied my prayers, dear most heavenly Father, most gracious and everlasting God, were replaced with very simple, blunt, and direct requests like help and please don't let me die like this. And by the time he gets out that prayer, it's green light go, and
You gotta go.
he's off the plane. He steps out. He described. I like the way he
Yeah. Yeah.
describes.
I liked that.
He steps one leg out of the door, and he just gets sucked out. Like,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
assumed I no, I assumed the proper position, and somehow my left leg stepped out. Like not
yeah,
I stepped out, but my left leg did it for me.
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, okay, here we go.
You do this and then you do this and then you do this and then, oh crap.
And he closes his eyes and he counts and he looks up, and lo and behold, his chute has opened and he's going to be okay. And at that point, even though you're still, you know,
Like
you're still,
he doesn't open his eyes until he it pops.
until the
And
chute's
then
up.
he looks
Right.
up, he's like, oh good.
Oh, thank God. um, so he has made his successful jump. Everything's going great. And now it's time for the depressing part, because because we change perspectives now to the other Wes,
Woohoo.
who has more children by another woman. Although he kept it at least in the neighborhood. The mother of his most recent children, Cheryl, lived just down the street from Alicia, who was his girlfriend in the last chapter. So at least, you know, you keep it in the neighborhood. That's cool, right? You know, you don't have to go too far. Um, and but the problem is with Cheryl is that Cheryl has a what sounds like a pretty serious drug problem. And even though Wes is a drug dealer, he recognizes the harmful effects that like serious drug use has on people, and especially with in Cheryl's case because she's addicted to heroin. You know, she doesn't just take a hit of coke every once in a while to pep herself up. Like she is a heroin addict, and it is a serious problem.
Yeah.
We're told that like Wes has uh, seen people, you know, on the sidewalk lining up to get their fix. Um, and he's starting to question his role in all of this. You know, it says he quote he saw this every day. The people who would line up around the corner for drugs, the people who would do anything to score. He knew these people because he was the one who got them what they needed. It was his job. And it pained him to realize that the mother of his children was just like them. And then a little bit further on, it says he understood that his thoughts contradicted his actions. He had long since accepted that. It was just that his tolerance of his own hypocrisy was wearing thin. So his girlfriend, the mother of his children, who we're given to believe he genuinely cares about, is a drug addict, and living with her and seeing it up close every day has sort of brought it home to him, the damage that he does, or the damage
Hmm.
that what he does, how he
That he contributes
contributes,
to.
yeah,
Yeah.
to people's lives. And what he does, it's a nice way for him to make a whole bunch of money, but a lot of the people who come to him for drugs are, he's helping them to ruin their lives, and he's getting to a point where he's no longer okay with that. Um, and there are other things too. It talks about how he's tired of getting arrested. He's tired of getting locked up. He's tired of getting shot at. He's tired of having his friends get shot. He's tired of going to funerals for his friends. Like the life in general is starting to wear on him. And he starts talking seriously about getting out and finding something else to do. And he has this friend named Levi who also used to be a drug dealer, and he managed to get out. And
Hmm.
Levi's plan is um, that he's joined this government program called Job Corps that dates back to the 60s. That was part of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society plan to lift people out of poverty. And generally speaking, like the war on poverty overall, that was a big part of the Johnson administration's domestic
Yeah.
policies that was largely dismantled in the 70s and 80s because we're a shit country, and we we figured out how to alleviate poverty, and then we just stopped doing it because, but Job Corps still exists and is still a thing. And so his friend Levi is joining Job Corps, and Wes decides he's going to do this too. And what Job Corps is it's basically like kind of a boot camp that you go to during the week. And if you didn't graduate high school, then you get education and you get trained up for your GED. And then once you get your GED, you get job training, and you decide what field you are. It's basically skilled trades like
Hmm.
carpentry and stuff like that. And you live on the Job Corps campus during the week and do your training and everything, and then you go home on the weekends, and you just do that until you complete the program or you quit. Um, and Wes discovers, to his uh, delight, that he's actually pretty good at the school stuff. That
Hmm.
Levi is told that he's going to have to go through like the entire GED training program because he's just not as, he doesn't test very well. But Wes tests well enough that he can skip most of the actual GED program and just get his GED relatively early in the program, and then go straight to the job training. Um, so at first it looks like things are going to turn around for Wes. It's kind of a parallel to Wes the author going to military school and then deciding he wants to join the army, and it's like, oh, he's found this structure
Hmm.
in which he can thrive, and it looks for him for a little bit like the other Wes has found the same thing with Job Corps, that this is a place where he can actually, he doesn't have to sell drugs. He sees a light at the end of the tunnel. He can do something else. Um, so he decides he's gonna focus on carpentry. That's going to be his trade. And he goes into the training program at Job Corps, and he talks about how for his final project in carpentry, he decides he's going to build like a playhouse for one of his daughters, and it's by far the most complex project of anybody in his class. And he works on it for months, and it's all, and he does a really good job, and it's all like sharp angles and straight lines, and everything's level and square, and it's big and it's beautiful, and it's like everybody's really impressed by it. Like he builds his daughter this playhouse, and it's fantastic, right? And then he graduates from the program, and he has to go back out into the real world, and he has to get a job, and he's able to get jobs. He's not unemployed, but none of the jobs are
But
really.
they're temps.
Yeah, they're all temp jobs, except for one of the jobs. They said one of the jobs was rehabbing houses, which sounds like he could put his carpentry skills to work there. But the others are like he gets a job in food service.
No, after 5 months, he moved on to rehabbing homes in the city, another temporary job.
Right, but then after, yeah, but
Oh,
at least that was like a carpentry thing.
yes, yes.
But then he moves on and he's working as like he's doing food prep.
Hmm.
Um, and the other thing is they're all low paying jobs. He never
Hmm.
makes more than $9 an hour, which is not a lot of money, just period. And when you've got four kids, as
And you're
Wes
living in the
does,
city.
and you're living in the city, that's really not a lot of money. Um, so he sees this opportunity to get out to do something else, and he did as good as he possibly could have in it. And then
And
when
it
that
wasn't enough.
and it wasn't enough, and we have the ending of the chapter, which is just, I mean, it's coming because you know that Wes ends up in jail, but still, it's just gutting that the ending of the chapter is Wes goes back to his old neighborhood in Baltimore, and we're told that he went back because he had to pick up a package. And you kind of see it coming after that. You're like, well, what's the package? You know where
You
this
know
is
what the
going.
package is.
Yeah, you know where this is going. But so he gets the package. He goes back to his apartment because at this point he's living on his own. He's not actually living with either of the two mothers of his kids or with any of his kids. But he's still taking care of them. He's sending them money and stuff. He's trying to do the right thing and to do right by his kids and their moms, right? But it's there's only so much money to go around. Like he can't make it on what he's earning on these jobs. So he picks up his package and he goes home and he opens up the package and it's cocaine. And the ending of the chapter is Wes starting to cook some cocaine to make he's making crack is what he's doing. And that's the end of the chapters. He's going back into the street life that he wanted to escape, that he tried to escape, but it just, his responsibilities, the things that are pulling on him are just too heavy for him to not go back. Like it's financially speaking, it is still his best option,
Hmm.
which is the sad part, you know. And that's the end of the chapter. Is Wes preparing to re-enter the drug game
But he
at
knows.
the end? Yeah, yeah. So, as we suspected from the title of the chapter, not a terribly uplifting. I mean, the other Wes or the author Wes's parts are fairly positive,
Well,
but the other Wes,
ironically, the author Wes is the one who gives us the title. It is the
yeah,
one who experienced the title because that referred to his base.
right, yeah, but yeah, the land that God forgot could also could also apply to West Baltimore. And actually, that's we didn't mention that the other Wes gets he gets tattoos, or he gets a tattoo with other members of his crew, and it's a tattoo of a devil head, like a Satan head.
Hmm.
And what when he's at the tattoo parlor getting the tattoo, one of the things he says there is no God, and if there is, he's never been to West Baltimore or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very bleak sort of. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
He doesn't say there is no God.
Oh, he's no. Oh, he says fuck God, doesn't he?
Mm.
He says fuck God. He's never been to Baltimore or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's
And
on the
yeah,
study guide the set of questions for this chapter. It says this chapter contains very strong language. Very is underlined, and this entire section is in bold. You may
you
skip page
all
140 if you
very.
want to continue at the Sunday evening air at the top of 141. So essentially, but yeah, that's one of those things that will get you fired if so essentially, looking for a way around. But they're sophomores in high school. This book has been approved, so that's just sort of a covering my butt
Yeah.
thing. And also, that gives them, I think with the honors class, I can talk about that choice. That is a choice to use that, and it's
Yes.
included very deliberately. It's not. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
you could get some of the same. You could leave that out, and the meaning is still there, but the choice to include it is deliberate and meaningful.
Yes. Hasadiga Ibawai.
What?
Yeah, are you, have I actually heard the soundtrack of a musical that you haven't heard?
Possibly.
From the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, I'm not like I know about that one. Haven't seen it.
Yeah. Well, Hasadiga Ibawai is one of my favorite songs from that soundtrack because I think it's the only one that I've ever heard more than a couple times. And Hasadiga Ibawai in English it
It
means
sounds like it's speak like saying an acronym.
I think it's I'm not sure I think it's an African language. I don't know if it's Kenyan or Nigerian or but it's the show is about Mormon missionaries who go to Africa, right? And so Hasadiga Ibawai is this phrase in the native tribal tongue, and they're like, "What does it mean?" You know, because he sings a song where it's Hasadiga Ibawai, and they're like, "What does it mean?" And he says, "Well, let me see. Um, Ibawai means God, and Hasadiga means fuck you. So I guess in English it would be fuck you, God." These Mormon missionaries are like, like you can't say that. And he's like, sure you can.
Obviously, you can.
So, but yeah, so that's the end of chapter 7. And like I say, it's foreshadowing. We know going in that the other Wes ends up in prison, so
Yeah,
it's not as though it's a surprise, but it's still, you
yeah. Like
know,
Charles said, the way that it's written is well done.
yes, definitely. Well, that's another thing. I think it's a good writing lesson if you want to look at it just in terms of craft.
Show
Uh,
don't tell.
show don't tell, and also not everything has to be a surprise. You know, sometimes the way you reveal something
Mm-hmm.
is the important thing, and even if you know what the reveal is going to be.
It's not what happens; it's how it happens.
Yeah, like I'm a big believer in, especially with narrative storytelling and with fictional storytelling. Although I mean, this isn't fiction, but it's told in a very narrative style.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer that the building blocks of a compelling narrative are setups and reveals, and sometimes the reveal can be something that the audience knows is coming, but
Mm-hmm.
it still works. It's still effective with the way that the reveal is accomplished. And I think, yeah, what Charles says in the chat with the package, like we know
Mm-hmm.
what the package is. We know what that is. He's coming back to his old neighborhood. He's not
Mm-hmm.
making any money with his legitimate jobs. He's got mouths to feed. He's got bills to pay. He picks up a pack. Like there's no
A
suspense. Yeah,
package.
you know what it is, but it still lands when he because he saves the reveal for the very end. He doesn't tell you that it's cocaine in there until the last sentence of the chapter, but you know it's coming, and he just
You may
lets it.
not know like which like exactly what type of drug it is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but you know what is happening. You know the
Yeah, that
general
he's
idea
getting back into
that
your
he's
life.
getting back into it after trying so hard to get out of it,
Yeah.
and it hits. It's really effective. It's like, oh damn, even though you knew it was coming, both big picture because you know where Wes ends up, and because the foreshadowing is not exactly subtle with the package. It still works, even though it's not a
Mm-hmm.
shock,
You
because it's
can
good
do
storytelling.
everything right and still fail.
Yes, the wisdom of Jean-Luc Picard. Mr. Data, it is possible to make no mistakes and still lose.
That is
That
not, what is it?
that is not. Oh, what is the?
That is not something that is life.
That is not something. That is life. Yeah, I'm gonna look it
I
up.
have it in a GIF somewhere. Go ahead, look it up. Look it up.
I'm looking it up right now. That is not a weakness. That is life.
That is not a
Yeah.
weakness. That is life.
It's possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life.
Yeah. He took that from Beyonce, you know.
Now, oh really? In
Yeah, I have a
1980,
GIF of her saying, you know, it's possible to do, I think she's the one who said it. It's possible to do everything right and still fail. That's life.
so somehow Captain Picard stole that from Beyonce
Yeah.
in 1989.
Captain Picard Picard wasn't around in
That's
1989. He
yeah.
lives in like the 24th
So you
century.
know what?
Duh.
So within the Star Trek universe,
Exactly.
Because Star Trek the Next Generation was not actually a show in the Star Trek universe,
Uh-huh.
Captain Picard stole that from
Historical
Beyonce.
documents,
Yeah.
Steve. Historical documents.
Captain Picard stole it from Beyonce. Oh my god,
Yes.
that should totally be a joke in one of my comics. He should
That
say that
Picard is actually a huge Beyonce fan.
he should say that to somebody, and Riker should be like, you know, where do you get this shit? And Picard could be like, well, I'm pretty sure I stole that one from Beyonce. That's it.
Yes.
But
Or I mean, we could also work it into Ensign's log.
that's true. Yeah. Where do you get this shit from?
That we're on Next Generation.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Sarah said to make sure that I was supposed to, or somebody was supposed to remind us to mention the Ensign's log, among other things.
Yes, and also, and by the way, Rose again in the chat just mentioned, you reminded me of one of my favorite jokes from Star Trek Beyond, which is to date the most recent Star Trek movie. There's a scene in Star Trek Beyond where they find an old starship that is like 100 years old, and they're going through they start up the computer, and they're going through like the files on the computer and stuff, and one of them starts playing music, and it's a Beastie Boys song, and everybody's like, "What is that?" And somebody says, "It sounds like classical music." And I love that joke so much. It's like pop music from the 20th and 21st century, and they're in the 23rd century. So to them, it's I think it's classical music.
Classical music is actually a genre, but whatever.
I love it. I know.
It's not the same because classic books are not a genre, unfortunately.
It's a good joke.
My favorite, I don't know, Karen, if you mean my favorite genre of classical books, or whether classical books are my favorite genre. Or anyway,
yeah.
So
you have
a video coming up on Monday.
I do, and I think what Sarah wanted us to talk about was, and I don't know, I don't think I mentioned this to you yet, but we mentioned on the last Trek Reluctantly that we're about to finish season 1 of Deep Space Nine, and going forward, I was thinking about not watching every single episode.
Yes.
Because it'll just take us forever to get through it. So Sarah actually took it upon herself, and put a lot of work into it, and emailed me episode ratings from, obviously in her opinion, of all of the episodes from season 2 with suggestions for which ones we could skip.
Oh, so thoughtful.
Yeah, so
not that I would know, because I ain't seen any of them.
So I'm gonna try. And the other thing, what it reminded me of is that season 2 of Deep Space Nine is really fucking good, and there are so many great episodes. So it's really going to take an act of will for me to whittle it down. To not just say, oh, let's watch them all. You know what I mean? Because it's a really good season. But I want to try to focus on like the high points and stuff that like you would need to know to be able to follow like ongoing story arcs. And not watch every single episode.
Here's the problem. That assumes that I'm going to remember it.
That's true. And I mean, and there will probably be times where,
at least that way it'll be my fault.
But yeah, so that's something that we can talk about. And but yeah, so
hey, you just tell me which one we're looking for, and I'll make sure I got the right one.
You just tell you which episode to watch.
Just let me know the day of.
Yeah. But yeah, so and yeah, I have a video coming out on Monday that is about stateless athletes in the Olympics, and then a week from today on Wednesday, I have the next video in my Best Batman Ever series coming out. Actually, Charles, that's an idea. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that or not, but that's a good suggestion to let the patrons choose which episodes we watch. That might be something to explore. Yeah, especially if like if there are multiple episodes that I think we should watch, but I don't want to, I feel like I can't justify watching all of them. You
could say like pick 4 of these 7
right.
or
something like that. Yeah. So we could look into that. That might be an idea, because the thought did cross my mind. But yeah, next Wednesday is it's the next video in my Best Batman Ever series, where I am talking about I have to say now, the first time they killed off Alfred in the comics, because apparently they killed him off again last year. But the first time they killed off Alfred in Batman comics, which was in 1964, and then how they brought him back. Because what happened was in 1966, they started doing this incredibly popular Batman TV show. And the producer of the Batman TV show said, Alfred's in our TV show. You should put Alfred back in the comics.
Really?
And DC Comics said, yes, sir. Because DC Comics was really doing poorly and sales were really down. And they were like, oh, producer of the popular TV show based on our comics, whatever you want. So they brought back Alfred. And my video was about the details of how that happened, how they killed Alfred off, how they brought him back, what happened in between. It's a really fun.
Did sales increase once they brought him back?
Well, sales went up because of the show,
connection with the show,
because of the show. But I mean, once they brought him back, he stayed. You know, like they didn't until last year, apparently, when somebody else got the bright idea and they said, "Oh, I know what we can do. Let's kill Alfred
again."
So, you know, but so from then until last year, he was, I mean, I remember in the 90s, they did a story where Alfred quit for a while and then came back. You know, they did the thing like kind of like what they did in The Dark Knight Rises, where Alfred's like, you're taking this Batman shit way too far, man. I'm out of here. You know, like I can't stand around and watch you kill
you do this to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So Alfred did that in the comics at one point in the mid 90s, but eventually he came back. And hopefully
Dark Knight Rises just copied it.
Kinda, yeah. Well, Dark Knight copied it, took inspiration from it. You know, I mean, they copied Night. Actually, I thought it was. I mean, people have mixed feelings about that movie. I thought, having read the comics, that it draws its inspiration from. It kind of mashes together Nightfall and No Man's Land.
Yeah.
And it does a pretty good job of that, because those are two very different stories that don't necessarily go together, but it takes, you know, the basic premise of, it takes the inciting incident of Nightfall, which is Batman getting his back broken and being put out of commission. And then it kind of, from there, it goes into No Man's Land, where Gotham is isolated from the rest of the world and kind of left to fall into chaos. And it stitches those two together pretty well, I think. Mm-hmm. So just as someone who appreciates seeing creative adaptations of comic books, I think it's a good object lesson, even if a lot of people don't think it's that great of a movie, but it's good for that reason. But yeah, so that's the next Batman video. And also that Wednesday, our next Trek Reluctantly, which will be the final episode of season 1, is the finale. And I don't know if it's not the last episode. It's one of the last times you will have to endure Keiko as the school teacher.
Oh.
So you will have, but the school stuff, there is the sort of ethical or moral question of the episode.
It makes sense. It's going to be my first day back at school.
And
woo-hoo. So I'll have that to look forward to, like more school.
Yay.
I get home.
You get home from school and we can watch a Star Trek show about school.
That's okay. That's okay. Because I can drink during that.
Yeah, baby.
Yes, and you guys will get to see Tipsy Dave.
Oh boy.
Probably. At least you will if you almost certainly will if Steve tells me about it, reminds me that Keiko's on the show ahead of time. And even if you don't, like if you wait until the live stream and you're like, it's this one, I'll be like, okay, well, don't start it yet. And you'll see me leave the room. I'll be off camera. You'll hear the door.
And then a few minutes later, you'll come back and you'll be like, all right, let's watch this, baby.
It's just right over there in the kitchen. It won't take me long.
That's
I'll be like, look, it's going to be simple. Some Sprite, some lime juice, a little bit of, what will I put with it? Probably just some sweetener. Maybe some, what would go well with that? Lime juice and maybe some mango.
And then what's the
sugar-free syrup?
And what's the
Ronnie
booze?
makes sugar-free syrups and they're really good.
And what's the booze? Vodka?
Tequila.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you don't put vodka and Sprite together. I mean, vodka and Sprite and like raspberry juice, pretty good. But
I love how you say you don't put vodka and Sprite together. Then you immediately gave an example of a drink you could do. With
but if you have like, and because there's just not enough flavor there. to, because vodka doesn't have a strong flavor of
Right.
its own. But because I said lime juice, tequila. Everybody knows.
Well, pardon me. Oh, and you have a video that just went up yesterday, right? On your channel.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I'm really I'm struggling with the script but I'm really happy with what I've got so far. In my script that the working title is Judgment, about Olympic events and how they are developed and scored, and how all of those, how it's observed, and like the race events, it's just about who crosses the finish line first.
Yeah.
But that there's more to it than just the observation in decisions of, the fact that women and men both have a short hurdle distance and a, more moderate hurdle distance. But with women's, it's 100 and 400. And with men, it's 110 and 400, because I I've started doing some research on that. I haven't found the answer yet.
Because somebody just decided.
Because reasons. So, the gymnastics events are different enough that you can kind of see why they developed as they did. And it's I was able, plus I was able to find more on that in, a few hours of Googling here and there. Whereas with the track and field, it's more like, it has always been this way.
Probably because that's how they did it in like fucking ancient Greece. And they're like, okay, I guess we have to do it that way.
Yeah, because, we have so many videos from ancient Greece.
Well, but they wrote shit down. Well, it's just like the
elder. Here we
it's
come.
It's like the reason why a marathon is the length that it is. Well, because it's just
marathon wasn't in the Olympics.
But it is now.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't. My point.
But I'm saying the reason that a marathon is the length that it is because some guy ran someplace once and everybody was like, that's how long it is. It's completely arbitrary.
Ran someplace. Do you know where he ran?
Marathon.
Okay, you did know that.
Yeah.
Good.
He ran to marathon. That's why we call it a marathon.
Ta-da!
But yeah, so, and I've had a chance to read the script as you've been writing it, and it's terrific so far. So I'm sure that'll be a great video. Eventually. Soon. Yeah, so everybody check out Dana's YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Dana Coldares. It is linked in the description of this video. Like, share, subscribe, and please leave her comments. Also, don't forget about the charity links, which are also linked down below, charitylinks.page. Our friend Some Random Geek created that for us and maintains those. And you click that link and it'll take you to a Google Doc with all kinds of fundraisers and PayPal links and legal defense funds, et cetera, for people who need a helping hand. And if you have a few extra bucks laying around that you want to put toward a good cause, you can do a lot worse than to help out some of our friends in the charity links. So that's it. We'll be back in 2 weeks to read chapter 8 of Read Away, and we're getting close to the end of the book. And our
chapter 8 is what I'm going to suggest is chapter 8 in the epilogue. The epilogue's not real long.
Right, chapter 8 in the epilogue, and then that'll finish it,
and that'll be it.
That'll finish up, and then as we mentioned last time, the next book is Quicksand. So if you haven't gotten that one yet, I would recommend, finding a copy.
Yeah, Sarah, come on, step it up.
Yeah. So,
but and then you need to decide how you want to divide that up.
That's true.
Because you're going to be in charge, Mr. Big Shot.
It's my book this time. So we'll figure all that. And then next Friday is my next Ask Away. So we'll post the link for questions for that on Monday for members and patrons, and that's always a good time too. So that's what's coming up in the next couple of weeks on this channel and on Dana's channel.
Don't forget about your podcast that you do with Jason.
That's right.
At Let Me Listen Podcasts.
That's right. Yes. Late Seating had a new episode go up today. It's our review of Rudy, which is not a good movie.
What?
I know.
Gee willikers,
but
Steve.
It's so much fun. I was talking with you about it when I was watching it, and I was like, it's a lousy movie, but I was not in a bad mood at all when I was watching it because I was so looking forward to the review and getting to just tear it to pieces. And it was so much fun. It was so cathartic to give that movie a negative review because it's such a dog shit movie. But
hold back. Tell us how you feel.
It's not a good movie, and Rudy is not a good character. And I wish that something terrible had happened to him, but sadly it did not.
Hey, dude, fan fiction.
That, oh God, my Rudy fanfic would be he doesn't join the football team, he joins the baseball team, and he has an unfortunate encounter with about a dozen bats. Um,
That's a pretty
anyway,
short fanfic.
I'll be like, does Notre Dame have a baseball team? Well, in my version, it does. So anyway, and then of course a week from tonight is the next Ensign's log, which you are in alongside Jason and myself. So yeah, let me listen podcast.com is where you can listen to that. And that's it, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much
Put a
for
link to people who can, so that they can either become a member of your channel or they can click and on, because
That's
you
right.
put it on the down there.
Patreon.com/Steve Shives.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/Steve Shives. Or you can click the join button.
No, but it makes it show up on the video.
Oh, I don't have it in this one. I don't usually show it in this.
Okay.
I have
never
it on,
mind that.
But it's also linked in the description. Patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron, or click the join button to become a member. Either one of those helps me out a whole bunch. So if you like what I do on YouTube and you want to help out, there's how you can help out, and I really appreciate it. And that's it.
And that's it. And we've got time that you could watch wrestling.
Except it ain't on tonight. At least not the one that I watch. The one that I watch ain't on tonight. The other one is on that I don't watch.
That you don't watch. Well, don't go watch it then.
I'm not. I'm gonna go watch some. I'm gonna go watch the Olympics. All right. Bye, everybody.